Hi guys, the topic for my video today is 3 killer questions on temporary works designed for you developments. Munoz, one of the co-founders of Assets for Life. I'm here today at one of our developments in Loughton where we're building 14 flats and 2 commercial units. And today I have a very special guest. His name is John Beers. He's a structural engineer, chartered structural engineer that I actually know for several years now. We worked together while I was a contractor working in central London. He's got amazing experience. I'll let himself introduce himself in a minute. And so I'm going to ask him 3 killer questions that hopefully help you with your journey. John? Good to have you here, my friend.
Pleased to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So if you could just let us know about yourself, who you are, what do you do, your background, company services, and how long have you been in business?
Yeah. Well, I've been a structural engineer from a trainee to a chartered structural engineer, career of about 43 years now. I've worked for a small steelwork fabricator, a medium-sized contractor, a large multinational contractor, and subsequent to that, 2 colleagues and I set up a current consultancy, Asset Consulting Engineers.
Love the name.
Yeah, it fits well. Yeah, coincidence. There are just the 2 of us now. One of our colleagues retired a couple of years ago, but we're carrying on. We've been going for 16 years, doing various permanent works for London Underground, Network Rail, domestic type residential work and small developments.
Fantastic.
As well as that, we provide a service to contractors doing third-party checks on their subcontractors' temporary works designs. We also do a little bit of temporary works design ourselves as and when needed.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that introduction. So let's go into the basic knowledge. It's always good to start with that. So my understanding is, right, you got permanent works structural engineer who carries out the substructure and the superstructure for every single project. But then what happens during construction? Who does the temporary works? You know, is it a specialist field, or what is exactly temporary works?
Temporary works generally are aspects of structure that are required for the safe construction of the works.
Okay.
So, and that could be if in a domestic situation you're knocking out a load-bearing wall, you need to put some acro props in to support the wall above whilst you put the new steel beam in. Or it could be a large city centre excavation where you need temporary retaining walls, large props to take all the ground forces, and everything in between, scaffolds, mats or working platforms for piling rigs, lots of
cranes,
outriggers for mobile cranes, foundations for tower cranes, endless list.
Highly complicated, and I might say that, you know, there's a gap there, because I'm a chartered civil engineer myself. I went to university, never thought about temporary works. No. I only was taught about permanent works, which is obviously something that I learned myself. I did temporary works during my previous life as a contractor, and you kind of learn by doing it, kinesthetic learning, isn't it? So
my experience came through working for a large contractor in their design division,
100%.
and we gave support to the sites designing 100%. Temporary works.
And it's so key. I couldn't stress this no more for you guys. We're here dealing with human lives, right? And if we have temporary work design and get it wrong, it could be catastrophic for your project.
Yeah.
So make sure you allocate, you appoint first of all someone that is competent to do the job.
Yeah. In a lot of respects, the temporary works are very much in the domain of the contractor.
Sure.
It's their responsibility to establish safe method statements, how they're going to do the work, and generally they would employ their specialist designers.
Design team.
But it's worth, as a developer, having your own structural engineer to oversee those designs and make sure that you've got a third party check on those
100%.
issues.
Very key. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for that. Right, let's crack on with some of the questions that I have for you. But one of the questions I got for you is, how do you avoid appointing the wrong structural temporary works engineer, and what key checks developers need to make before the appointment? For an instance, do they have to be members of our?
I would generally recommend that people employ someone who is a chartered or an incorporated structural or civil engineer.
Sure. Main reason?
I speak mainly from the point of as a structural engineer. Sure. I am a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers, but mainly structures. They've actually got a very good document on their website, which gives a lot of advice on how to employ the right structural engineer. So very good advice.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Good.
So as I say, you really want someone who is a qualified registered engineer, whether that be it doesn't necessarily need to be a chartered engineer, but at least an incorporated engineer. And the other thing with all professionals, you need someone who's got a reasonable professional indemnity insurance.
Sure.
Not just someone who is doing a bit of part-time work, knocking up designs on their kitchen table while they're watching EastEnders.
So this basically needs to be back to back with you size of the project. So you're building, let's say, I don't know, £1 million project, you need professional insurance needs to be back to back with that, ideally. If you're doing more, higher caliber projects, obviously you need to increase that. But it's, absolutely, everyone makes mistakes, especially if you're structural, permanent works engineer, you put in a low license risk, and it's key to have that, so otherwise you end up paying the consequences later on.
Again, on the Institution of Structural Engineers website, there is a part that is called Find an Engineer. You can go into there, and any engineer that's listed on there, it will give their specialities, so you can pick out engineers who claim to be experts on temporary works or specialise in temporary works.
Yeah, for you guys there's two different specialities. One is temporary works and one is permanent works. Temporary works is specialist skill, and we have made mistakes in the past when we had appointed a permanent works engineer claiming that they would do the temporary works, but at the end we quickly realised they were overkilling all the designs, and therefore we spending a lot more money than was needed. So key that when you appoint a temporary works engineer, they have the correct qualifications first of all, and the correct experience and knowledge. So check the background, check the previous clients, and check the work that they have done. Fair to say that?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Right, next question I have for you, John, is how much time should I allocate for a temporary work design, and what sort of information do you need for you to do your job properly?
You certainly need a good idea of the structure itself.
Sure.
I'm talking here about renovation of existing structures. So you need to. The temporary works engineer would need to do a good inspection of the existing building, understand where the loads are coming from, what the intensity of the load is. So any temporary propping works or with facade retention, all those loads can be accounted for and taken into the temporary works.
Okay.
When it comes to things like scaffold, you obviously need to know where you can actually support the scaffold. Sometimes you need to bridge over entrances to the building, to the site. That all needs to be taken into account. And existing services in the road when pavement. If you can or can't build out into the pavement or into the road, whether you can, and if you are building into the road, protection from vehicle impacts. So there's many things you need to take into account.
Sure. So it's quite complex, and I would say probably it's fair to say that you need to have appoint that person right at the start of your project to avoid any delays. Correct.
I think you need to with regards to temporary work, I think you really need to be sure about your contractor and make sure they are competent
Right.
in understanding the temporary works that they require
Complexity.
to do the work. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
And then whether it's your responsibility to design, to employ the temporary works designer or theirs, they still need that understanding of what is required
100%. Yeah.
and how they intend to do the work. Because that is the problem. It's difficult for the client or the developer to actually tie down how the contractor does the work. You really got to leave it up to them. Because if you specify how they've got to do the work and it doesn't go right, it all comes back on you.
Come back to the developer, doesn't it? You end up paying the consequences.
Yeah.
And once again, time is money. If you appoint the wrong person, then you need to get someone to rectify the work. You know, it's doubling up, isn't it? And then you then do critical path goes.
That's assuming it is to that extent.
And
it could go before, beyond that, where serious. Well, no, I'm thinking personal injury, serious injury, or even fatalities. If things go wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you as a client, so you know CDM regulations out there. If you don't appoint the right, member of your team, you might be liable. You might just have under the court and defend yourself. Yeah. So it's key that you do these checks right at the start of your project, and you appoint the relevant people for your projects. Absolutely fundamental. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, do please hit subscribe over here. We have more informative, full of content videos that will help you with your journey.